Don't let the bank decide for you. Those 6 words may be the most important message a homeowner ever hears when financial pressure begins building. At first, the statement seems obvious. Most people would immediately agree with it. Of course, I don't want the bank deciding for me. Of course, I want to stay in control. Of course, I want to determine my own future. The problem is that many homeowners don't realize control is not something you lose all at once. You lose it gradually. You lose it one missed opportunity at a time, one delayed conversation at a time, one unopened letter at a time, 1 month of waiting at a time. And by the time many homeowners realize what has happened, they often discover that someone else has begun making decisions that used to belong to them. The reality is that financial problems rarely arrive overnight. Most homeowners don't wake up one morning and suddenly find themselves in trouble. Instead, the situation develops slowly. The monthly budget gets a little tighter, the savings account gets a little smaller, the credit card balances get a little larger, insurance costs increase, property taxes increase, groceries cost more, fuel costs more, everything seems to cost more. And while income may increase occasionally, expenses often increase faster. For a while, homeowners adjust. They've always adjusted. They've always figured things out. They've always found a way. And that confidence often becomes one of the reasons they wait longer than they should. They assume they'll figure this out too. Maybe next month will be better. Maybe work will improve. Maybe overtime will return. Maybe the business will pick up. Maybe the tax refund will solve the problem. Maybe the next commission check will fix everything. And sometimes it does, but many times it doesn't. Meanwhile, the clock keeps moving. That's the part many homeowners underestimate. Time doesn't stop while you're trying to figure things out. The mortgage doesn't pause. The lender doesn't pause. The timeline doesn't pause. Everything keeps moving whether you're paying attention to it or not. And that's where homeowners begin giving away control. Not intentionally, not because they don't care, but because they delay gathering information. Let's talk about something most people don't want to admit. Financial stress is exhausting. It affects sleep. It affects relationships. It affects concentration. It affects confidence. It affects nearly every part of daily life. Many homeowners carry around enormous stress that nobody else sees. They smile at work. They show up for family events. They continue with their daily routines. But underneath the surface, they're worried. They're worried about bills. They're worried about their future. They're worried about making the wrong decision. They're worried about what comes next. And because those concerns create discomfort, many people avoid looking directly at the problem. They postpone reviewing the numbers. They postpone difficult conversations. They postpone asking questions. They postpone learning about their options. And while that may temporarily reduce stress, it often increases long-term risk. Because avoiding a problem doesn't stop the problem. It simply reduces the amount of time available to solve it. Let's imagine 2 homeowners. Both are facing similar financial challenges. Both are worried about making future mortgage payments. Both are uncertain about what comes next. The first homeowner decides to gather information immediately. They determine the property's current value. They review the loan balance. They evaluate household finances. They explore possible solutions. They seek advice. They ask questions. Most importantly, they develop a plan. The second homeowner chooses to wait. Not because they're irresponsible, not because they don't care, but because they feel overwhelmed. And feeling overwhelmed is understandable. Nobody enjoys facing difficult financial realities. Nobody enjoys uncertainty. Nobody enjoys discussing situations that may require significant decisions. So they wait. A few months later, both homeowners are still dealing with the same challenge, but they are no longer standing in the same place. The first homeowner understands the situation. The second homeowner is still guessing. The first homeowner knows the numbers. The second homeowner hopes the numbers improve. The first homeowner understands available options. The second homeowner assumes there may not be any options. The first homeowner is making decisions. The second homeowner is reacting to circumstances. That difference matters because flexibility is usually greatest early in the process, not later. Many homeowners mistakenly believe they should wait until they absolutely have to make a decision. Unfortunately, that's often when the best opportunities have already started disappearing. Think about it this way. If you knew a bridge was out 5 miles ahead, you'd have plenty of time to choose another route. If you discovered the bridge was out 50 feet ahead, your options would be far more limited. The same principle applies to financial challenges. The earlier you understand your situation, the more flexibility you usually have. The later you wait, the fewer choices often remain. Let's talk about equity, because equity can be one of the most powerful tools a homeowner possesses. For many families, their home represents their largest financial asset. Years of mortgage payments, years of appreciation, years of sacrifice, years of commitment, all building equity. Yet, surprisingly, many homeowners have no idea how much equity they actually have. They know approximately what they owe. They know approximately what they paid, but they don't know what the property would realistically sell for today. That information matters because equity often creates options. Options create flexibility, and flexibility creates control. The more information a homeowner has, the more effectively they can evaluate available paths. But equity isn't guaranteed. Markets change, conditions change, values change, financial situations change, and homeowners who wait too long sometimes discover that opportunities they once had no longer exist. That's why understanding your position matters, not because you're required to take action today, not because you're required to sell, not because you're required to make a major decision, but because information creates choices, and choices create control. Now let's discuss something many homeowners misunderstand. Doing nothing is still a decision. People often believe they are avoiding a choice. In reality, they're making one. Choosing not to gather information is a decision. Choosing not to understand available options is a decision. Choosing not to create a plan is a decision. And unfortunately, those decisions often work in favor of the lender rather than the homeowner. Because while the homeowner is waiting, the lender's process continues moving forward. Statements continue arriving. Notices continue arriving. Deadlines continue approaching. The system continues moving, and every step forward gradually shifts more control away from the homeowner. This becomes especially important in Nevada. Many homeowners don't realize how quickly timelines can move once payments are missed and the process begins progressing. The good news is that options often exist earlier than people realize. The bad news is that many homeowners don't start looking for those options until much later. That's why education matters. That's why awareness matters. That's why planning matters. Let's talk about what control really means. Control doesn't mean every outcome is perfect. Control doesn't mean every option is ideal. Control simply means understanding your situation clearly enough to make informed decisions before someone else starts making those decisions for you. Control means understanding the timeline. Control means understanding the numbers. Control means understanding the consequences of various choices. Control means acting intentionally rather than reacting emotionally. And that's exactly why early action matters. Not panic, not fear, not pressure. Action. Simple action. Gather information. Understand your position. Review your finances. Learn about available options. Create a plan. Then make decisions based on facts instead of assumptions. Because assumptions are dangerous. Assumptions create uncertainty, and uncertainty often leads to delay. Delay leads to fewer choices. Fewer choices lead to less control, and less control increases the likelihood that someone else will determine the outcome. One of the most common comments heard from homeowners who waited too long is this: "I wish I had known sooner." Not because the solution would have been easy, not because the outcome would have been perfect, but because they would have had more choices, more time, more flexibility, more control. And that's what this entire conversation is really about. Control. Maintaining as much control as possible while options still exist. Not waiting until choices become limited. Not waiting until deadlines create pressure. Not waiting until circumstances force decisions. But understanding the situation while flexibility still exists. Because once flexibility disappears, it becomes much harder to influence the outcome. Before we finish, let's talk about the Nevada Strategic Property Group. Nevada Strategic Property Group is a collaborative team serving Northern Nevada, including Skip Benton, Tony Taylor, and Savannah Lee with Coldwell Banker Select Real Estate, along with Angie Salcido with Premier Credit Solutions. Our goal is simple: help homeowners understand their position before situations become urgent. Help homeowners understand available options before flexibility begins disappearing. Help homeowners make informed decisions based on facts instead of fear. No pressure, no obligation, just information. And take action while the choices still belong to you.